Hey everybody, we're back for chapter 2. I didn't take off the section 1 part, but it's just chapter 2 in general. I just kind of condensed these chapters down into just the basic necessities so that we can make sure we cover what we need to, and the videos ain't too long. The standard this time is going to be the same as last time. Standard number 1, compare influences of ancient Greece, the Roman Republic, Judeo-Christian tradition, the Magna Carta, federalism, the Mayflower Compact, English Bill of Rights, House of Burgesses, Petition of Rights of the Government of the United States. Now, we're really going to focus a lot on the Magna Carta, the Mayflower Compact, the House of Burgesses in this chapter. Discuss the early history of the American colonies as the first objective. The second one is compare and contrast the European connection. And the third is analyze early documents that shaped the United States government. So, influences from England's early government. When people began to come to America from England in the 1600s, they brought with them the ideas of England. England is controlled by a monarch, which is a king or a queen. They are a monarchy. Now they are a constitutional monarchy, and Parliament has a lot of the control and things like that. But in the 1600s, they were a full-on monarchy with a king. This relationship to the monarch affected the early settlers. Now, the Magna Carta is something that was signed in 1215, way before there was colonization in the New World. Magna Carta was an agreement that nobles made the king sign. It was Latin for Great Charter, and it protected nobles and forced the king to give them rights. They rebelled in 1215 and literally forced the king to sign it. It gave rights to certain landowners, but these rights eventually trickled down to all English people. These included equal treatment under the law and a trial before one's peers. These are things that today we hold pretty dear to our heart, that everybody should be considered equal under the eyes of the law, and that you should have a jury trial so that you're not going behind some closed doors and a judge is deciding your fate, but you have people that are actually going to listen to the case, that are not biased in one way, and they're going to help make a decision on that. This is going to be the basis behind the rights given to Americans and the foundation of the country. So this is the important legacy that Magna Carta gives in American history. Now, in European history, it has a completely different role, but in American history, it is an inspiration and a launching pad to say, you know what, we've got rights too, and they need to be taken seriously. Bringing the English heritage to America. In the 1600s and 1700s, England was busy establishing colonies in America. Now, a colony is just a group of people in one place who are ruled by a parent country. People have colonized throughout history. England is probably the greatest colonizing country in history. They colonized all over the world. The early colonists were loyal to the king and to England. Now, a common misconception is that they came to the New World and they were rebellious and they just wanted to start a country. No, they were very loyal to the king at the time. They were British subjects. It's what would happen later on that would make them not as loyal to the king. The first permanent settlement in North America was Jamestown, which was founded in 1607 by the Virginia Company, which was a group of merchants from London with a charter from King James I. Now, a charter is just a written document granting land and authority to set up government. So what happened is the Virginia Company got this charter from the king to set up a permanent settlement in North America, and this was Jamestown, of course, named after King James. So that's the idea behind that. The Jamestown colony was ruled by a governor and a council appointed by the Virginia Company. In 1619, 2 people were voted from each county to meet with the governor and his council. These 20 people were called Burgesses. This is where the House of Burgesses comes in. Now, the reason why the House of Burgesses is so important is that it's the first representative assembly in the United States. Now, today, we go to the polls, we vote for senators, we vote for members of the House, we vote for all these different people to represent us. This was the first representative assembly in the New World. It wasn't America yet. It wasn't, any type of rebellion. At this point, it was still British colonies. Or it was a British colony. There wasn't a whole lot of it. It was the only one. And they were loyal to the king, but they met up and represented themselves and their voice being heard in government. That's going to be a key principle moving forward for our government. It had little power, but marked the first self-government in colonial America. In 1624, King Charles I canceled the charter and made it a royal colony, which means it was controlled by the king. The king appointed a new governor, but allowed the House of Burgesses to continue. So he allowed this democratic assembly to continue. These people that would meet up and discuss what was important to them. And that's going to be a key factor in the development of our country later on. Now, the next important thing we're talking about is the Mayflower Compact. In 1620, a new group of colonists landed in America. They were called the Pilgrims. They built a settlement called Plymouth, hundreds of miles north of Virginia. Now, we talk about the Pilgrims when it comes to Thanksgiving, and we discuss Plymouth Rock and the Mayflower and all this different stuff. But what the Pilgrims really contributed is the Mayflower Compact, which was a written plan for government written on the Mayflower. It was a plan of how their government was going to be set up. It was a constitution before a constitution was developed in the United States. So today we have the U.S. Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. But up until this point, the Mayflower Compact was the only written plan for government, which is all a constitution really is. They sat down and they said, how are we going to do this once we get on shore? And that was how they did that. And that's the reason why it's important that we understand this. Now, there's a really good video I show my students, and it seems kind of kiddish, but it's from, you can look it up on YouTube. It is the Mayflower Voyages. It's part of This Is America, Charlie Brown, the mini-series about Charlie Brown and history. It's a very good video discussing the Mayflower Compact. There's also some good History Channel documentaries about it as well. Compact is an agreement or a contract, and the signers pledge to obey the laws that were written to rule them. The Mayflower Compact developed a form of direct democracy that was common in the founding country through town hall meetings. So town hall meetings is going to be where the first democratic process is taking place in the New World. And it's going to set, like I said, the bedrock for what we're going to have later on. The success of Jamestown and Plymouth led to the rise of more colonies in America. Following the House of Burgesses and Mayflower Compact, there would be the example going forward to set up the government. As time went on, the colonists would start developing their own roads, schools, hospitals, and started to make their own decisions. In 1765, Parliament passed a Stamp Act, which required colonists to pay tax on newspaper and all legal documents. The colonists resented this, but had no representation. This would lead to the slogan, "No taxation without representation." So the colonists said, look, we're paying all these taxes. We're not represented in Parliament. We want some representation in Parliament, because if we're not being represented, we don't want to pay taxes. And that's kind of been the debate throughout the course of American history, is representation. The idea of the electoral college and the popular voting and all that kind of stuff. Even the development of how our country is developed from the standpoint of the legislative branch with the House and the Senate is based off of representation. So it's an important part of American history. But this is going to go on. The Stamp Act meant that you had to have a certain stamp put on playing cards, newspapers, legal documents, things like that. They're going to start taxing tea. This is going to lead to the Boston Tea Party. There's a number of different things. The Intolerable Acts is going to be another one, and you're going to start seeing that the king's going to start letting soldiers quarter in people's homes. I mean, they can go in there, they can take your stuff, they can sleep in your bed, and there's really nothing you can do about it. You're going to see that they're going to start having court cases and not giving people a jury trial, not giving them a fair trial, just put them before the magistrate, determine them guilty, send them back to England or whatever. And so this is going to really make the people mad. So we see that the First Continental Congress meets. They say, look, we're going to send a strongly worded letter to the king. We're going to tell him all the problems that we have with him. And in a year, if he hasn't responded in a way that we find fit, we'll do something about it. Well, it was less than a year later when the Second Continental Congress met in May 1775. The Congress spent months debating the best course of action, but independence ideas were growing. Some colonists were loyal to the crown and never thought it was realistic when it went with England. So you're going to have what's known as loyalists, which are people that are loyal to the king no matter what. They fight for the king in the American Revolution. And then you're going to have people that are what's called the Patriots, which are fighting for their independence. And so this is going to be kind of setting up for the American Revolution. In January 1776, Thomas Paine inspired many others to the idea of independence with his pamphlet Common Sense, which is a pamphlet calling for independence. Now, I remember we did an assignment on common sense. And it's important that we understand the importance of that document, because that pamphlet is really going to be what launches people towards the idea of wanting independence. He's like, look, the king's been treating us terrible. We need to do something about it. By 1776, many colonists agreed with Paine and agreed that they must break away from Great Britain. The Second Continental Congress approved the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776. This is why we celebrate the 4th of July in honor of this. And ironically, Thomas Jefferson is recorded as saying that July 2nd was going to be a day that was going to be remembered with fireworks and parades and all these different things. Ironically, it's 2 days later, and it's going to be on July 4th that Thomas Jefferson actually passes away. And so that's also an interesting thought as well. In theory, the American colonies were independent, but they still had one more obstacle. True freedom would not come until the Revolutionary War and Great Britain officially recognized the United States. States did most of the government, but there were certain things the government could not do, such as raise taxes. They realized to win a war against Great Britain, they had to have a strong central government. In 1777, the Congress detailed the plans for the Articles of Confederation, which is the first constitution of the United States. So the Articles of Confederation was the first official constitution of the United States, but it was weak. The government couldn't do anything. They could pass laws, but they couldn't enforce them because there wasn't an executive branch. There wasn't something, a part of it to enforce that. They couldn't have control over all of the different colonies. It was just a very weak form of government. A confederation is a group of individuals, and the Articles of Confederation established a system for cooperation between the states. This established Congress as the only government body and gave them central powers. These powers were limited, and it let them make taxes or enforce laws. So they couldn't make taxes, they couldn't enforce laws, and so because of this, it made it a weak form of government. They couldn't collect money, and they couldn't enforce laws. It was good enough to get through the American Revolution, but that was about it. So, that is Lesson 2 for Civics. Once again, we've covered this stuff already, but it's a good refresher to go back and look over it. So just a few things. I want you to stop and think about the mindset of the colonists during this time. These are people that had always been loyal to the king. This idea of fighting for independence was something new, something a lot of people couldn't wrap their minds around. Put your mindset in that. It's easy today to look and say, oh yeah, they did the right thing. But at the time, it meant certain death. It meant that if you fought for your independence, that you could be hung in the streets. It meant that you could be taken away from your family and shipped back to England to face trial there. There's a number of things that could have happened. These colonists, what they did was very brave by standing up to the only government they ever knew. So think about that for a little bit. Reflect on that. Reflect on the idea that the colonist was basically saying, you know what? We care more about this idea of being free than we do our own lives. And that's something pretty special. So, hope you're well. Hope you're staying healthy. Once again, I miss you all. I look forward to seeing you soon. And until next time, see you later.